Good evening, everybody. Welcome back to PSGL. George Morgan here, your commentator, alongside me, TK, who is going to be rounding off the season with me. Down the inside, absolutely possible scene.
This is for the win between these two.
I'm on the edge of my seat.
He needs to get it done now.
Blakely will dive to the inside.
We were robust. We got our elbows out.
Ronar takes the lead.
Because here comes Alfie Butcher.
Can't really complain with that one.
It's not going to be easy. The pressure is on, of course.
Yarda Watmere is your champion.
Well, good evening, everybody, and welcome back. It is, of course, PlayStation PSGL F1 tier. And as the season rolls on, season number 40 to be precise, we're moving to the business end of this campaign. Just 3 races to go, and tonight we trace Suzuka's cherry blossoms to the bright lights of Las Vegas. It is, of course, round 10 of season 40, and our championship leader, Oscar, he'll be looking to hit the jackpot once again this evening and all but cash in on the championship with 2 races to go. He can't quite do it this evening, but he can get ever so close. That golden opportunity coming off the back of back-to-back victories, 34 out of a possible 36 points over the last couple of weeks. A hot streak fueled by the continued absence of Alex Lofer and Owen, enabling to put one hand on the trophy, and he can all but confirm it this evening. Everything to play for still, though, in the Constructors and the Drivers' Championship. We'll go over those in due course, but tonight, I'm delighted to say, in the virtual commentary box, alongside myself, Tom Wilson, it is Dan Dowie Hoggard, or Daka. How are you doing, my friend?
Very well, Tom, and once again very excited to be here and cover what is hopefully going to be a cracking race here in Sin City. As you mentioned there, Oscar has put himself potentially within touching distance of the title. He's in cracking form right now, and of course benefiting somewhat from Alex Lofer and Owen essentially going AWOL in the last couple of weeks. So he's managed to stretch away, and it seems as though his biggest threat to the title may come from his own teammate. McLaren running away with the Constructors, it seems. In the meantime, they may be able to win it tonight, but we're just going to have to wait and see. Championship implications obviously kicking in as we hit the 10th round of this season. We've come a long way. Still a long way to go, I guess you could say, but we're certainly at the business end of this season now.
100%. Still a long way to go. And when we show you the standings, which we'll do just about now, we think, hang on, it might be a little bit closer than you're making out. Oscar at the summit, 86 points, 15-point cushion, but the table doesn't tell the full story. Alex Lofer missing once again. Owen, of course, mentioned to us that he is retiring as well, so he isn't going to be here as well. So the real focus is on the 2 papaya cars, as it typically is in real life. 23 points splitting Oscar in first and Volokongan, who sits in 4th. And if Oscar can outscore Volokongan by 13 points, which is no small task, then the second McLaren will fall out of contention, leaving the title to rest on Alex Lofer's attending shoulders if and when he does return. One championship can be wrapped up tonight, though. That is the Constructors. McLaren leading Alpine by 49 points, 29 on offer each week, which means that if Woking outscores Enstone by 10 points or more here in Las Vegas, then that team will be celebrating yet another crown. If we look at the makeup of the season, Oscar's obviously been very, very impressive. Only finished off the podium 3 times in the 8 races that he has been a part of. But the championship has turned into a little bit of a damp squid, it has to be said. Alex Lofer and Owen were going on so strongly. Each of them, or both of them, I should say, finishing on the podium in every single race they started. But they haven't been here for the last 3 weeks, and they're not going to be here tonight either.
Yeah, and that again, mathematically, is if Oscar continues the run of form that he's in right now, it will certainly guarantee Owen's out of the running, and all but guarantee Alex, as of course, as Owen himself has mentioned, we probably won't be seeing him at all for the rest of the season. So from a championship point of view, it does seem to be swinging one way, but I guess that old adage is true. Anything can happen in Grand Prix racing, and it usually does. So let's not counter check it just yet. We'll see what's going to happen here tonight. But I tell you what, with the way that Oscar absolutely dominated the field last time out in Suzuka, this is a very different circuit in terms of the driving style it demands, but especially with Owen and Alex not here, as well as several other big hitters in this championship, you sense the door is still open for him to do much the same here. We'll see if the other drivers can up their game. It's a very talented grid out there here tonight, but Oscar, the way he looked at Suzuka, Tom, I mean, you would think that he's in a great position to do much the same this evening.
100%. He had to work a little bit harder in the opening stages. Obviously, Suzuka, not the easiest of circuits to overtake on, but he got the strategy right. And once he was given the opportunity to scamper off away from the group that were battling very hard behind, he took that and absolutely ran with it. Got the gap out to, I think, over 6 seconds come the end of the race. One of the bigger winning margins that we've had all season, considering how close it has been in a couple, or most, I should say, of the races that we have had in season number 40. He was very, very composed. He was bulletproof out in front once he got into the lead of the race after starting from pole. Lost it off the line, got it back very quickly and did not look back from there. So more of the same, I think Oscar will be saying to himself. It was a very different win to Kota a couple of weeks ago. He was always in the lead battle, but that was much more of a management race. There was a big DRS train of cars, I think from first down to sort of 7th or 8th in the final few laps, and it was tyre wear that was the aim of the game. He looked after his tyres better than anybody else in that lead group, and once we got to lap 25, lap 26 of that 28-lap Grand Prix, he was able to use the tyre advantage he still had to break away from the group behind, who, well, a couple of them, I think it was Tony Richet in particular, wasn't it? His tyres fell off an absolute cliff with about 3 or 4 laps to go. We shouldn't be seeing tyre wear really being the point of discussion this week in Las Vegas. As we speak of Las Vegas, let's have a quick look at the calendar. You could just see it on the standing screen there. 3 races to go. Las Vegas, the Sin City tonight, and then 2 very different circuits to follow up. Next week it is Interlagos, Brazil, one of the most legendary places in the F1 calendar, and then our season finale, the championship, you would imagine will be decided by the time we head from South to North America. Mexico City rounding us off to complete season number 40. Gone past very, very quickly in 15 weeks, I think it is, with a couple of break weeks in there. Obviously can't wrap up the championship tonight, Oscar, but it would be quite fitting, wouldn't it? Brazil, a venue so many times we see championships decided in real life, for him to pick up that crown in a week's time.
Yeah, I do hope it's not picked up, though, in the medium between races. Again, a lot of that may depend on Alex. But, of course, his nearest rival in attendance tonight, Volakongan, we can't rule him out just yet. Ever consistent. 4 podiums in the last 5 races he has contested, or rather the last 5 races that we've been able to run, as we had to cancel things in Qatar. So he's still in the mix if something does happen to Oscar. Of course, there's that incredible statistic, I think 1 race outside of the points in the last 2 seasons. So he's incredibly fierce in race trim, especially. If he can stay close to Oscar, maybe he can capitalize at some point. It is an uphill battle, but it is that battle between the Woking boys that's becoming the kind of focus ahead of this race. So you can expect Oscar to be up there over 1 lap. Probably it's whether Volakongan can match him to some extent and keep that pressure on tonight. We're kind of clutching at straws at keeping this title fight alive, but Volakongan, I mean, you can never rule him out.
100%. You cannot rule him out. Very, very consistent performance. You said it there. Only finished outside of the points paying positions once in the last 2 seasons. He had a big streak going on before that as well. He wasn't typically on the podium or won races too many times. I think he ended a 2 or 3 season dry spell, a barren spell, without a podium or a race victory. Ended that this season a few weeks ago and has continued to be Oscar's closest challenger ever since Alex Lofer and Owen both decided that they would not be turning up too often for the rest of the season. Will we see Alex Lofer at all? Of course, he was our qualifying king, 100% pole position record. It doesn't look like he's coming back. He's been noted as having wheel issues for the last few weeks. I think the last 3 weeks he's signed out with wheel issues, so we'll have to wait and see whether that is true or false. Playing a game of Would I Lie to Us, or Would I Lie to You there. But with qualifying not too far away, drivers, of course, getting ready to try and extract the most out of themselves and, more importantly, their machinery. And if you want to try and find those extra tenths of a second, in particular over 1 lap and, of course, over race distance, then sim racing setups have absolutely got you covered. The Pro setups unlock the extra performance with the Pro F125 car setups created and developed by the very drivers you see racing week in, week out at PSGL Esports, and stable setups for every single track, whether it's qualifying or the race, wet or dry. They've got everything that you need to make yourself just that little bit faster. Of course, compatible with all 3 platforms, and all setups available at simracingsetup.com. There is a link in the description of this live stream for just £45.49. And make sure you use that code right there, PSGL, at checkout for a 5% discount on your purchase. You can guarantee that some of the drivers we'll be seeing this evening will be using those setups.
Yes, certainly, and those that have used those setups have reported incredible gains in performance, so make sure to check that out. Now we head, though, into the action out there on the track. 13 drivers in the lobby right now. I think we were waiting on 2 drivers, as Zem, and I think Finlay may be coming late as well, so we should get 15 in total, and then eventually we should be able to get a good race underway, so we can see how this track is going to be tackled over one lap. And this is a circuit that's rather different from Suzuka, like we were discussing last week. How that track, such an important qualifying session. We saw plenty of evidence there of how difficult it is to move up in race trim. This could be very, very different here, and another thing that's very notable around this track, well, I'm imagining most of these drivers are running fairly low wings. The setup that you use, there could be a bit more compromise in terms of one lap pace versus performance in the race, and some of those drivers may be adjusting their setups accordingly not to be vulnerable down that massive 1.8 kilometre back straight.
100%. Can be treading on eggshells a little bit with the setup that you try and run. This middle sector that we're going through with Lafferty at the moment can be absolutely abhorrent. If you can't get the front end to bite, can be tricky to get the power down as well. But equally, you want to run that low rear wing in particular because of that massive run out of turn number 12 down into the complex of 14, 15 and 16. That heavy braking zone with a couple of switchback corners that we've got to end the lap before you blast down. You don't brake again from turn 16 up until you get to turn number 1. That's another 15 or 20 seconds that you are full throttle trying to get the most out of your car. Sasaki retiring. He's going to be starting from the back as he did 7 days ago, but Lafferty will be leading us around. We are on the strip straight now with the RB car, who's had some very decent performances in recent weeks, it has to be said. Another one is Evan Nye, who recently was promoted from F2, was absolutely dominating F2 and has come in and very much held his own, got a podium to his name, has been very, very competitive over the last few weeks.
Seems to find himself in and around the lead group pretty much every time he's turned up, so looking very impressive. Lafferty, of course, showed some great raw pace last time out in that race at Suzuka. He'll get this session kicked off proper, though, as he heads now up towards the start line. Let's see what a full lap at this Las Vegas circuit is all about. Breaking down into turn 1. You want to keep the line quite tight here, not let the car run out. Keep battle for traction 2 on the exit through turn 2. Just a little bit of a left off. Actually, I believe that's turn 3 in terms of the way the corners are set up. Is a little bit DRS for the first time on this track. Coming up towards turn number 5. Heavy on the brake, shifting down 3rd gear. Very aggressive with the rotation then. A little bit of locking of the tyres, but he's away and gone. And now into this very tricky, tight, technical section of the track. Breaking down into 3rd gear. Little bit of locking, difficult braking zone. He did get pushed out a little bit. Flicking it now in towards turn number 9. Tough traction on the way out, and now it is that overtake button and a gleeful run at full throttle, getting on for 300 kilometers an hour towards the Vegas Strip. First, you've got to deal with turn 12, maybe the most important corner on the track. The exit is paramount out of here as he flicks it in, gets it set up, and he is on a long run down. Again, more than a mile long this straight, Lafferty. He can enjoy a little rest now at full throttle.
Little bit of respite after the corners being thrown at you left, right and centre through the first and middle sector, and this is where you've got to make sure you've got the car set up nicely, and it is that balancing out that we spoke about. If you're running the lower wings, you are going to be working the tyres ever so slightly more because you haven't got the downforce to propel you through the corners. Heavy braking though, down into 14, 15 and 16. Expect to see a bit of contact there, rubbing of wheels and maybe a little bit more. Just grazes the barrier ever so slightly as he comes through 16. Full throttle once again, used pretty much all of the battery that is in reserves. As in retards, we cut the beam through the final corner. 130.2, we should be dipping our toes into the 1 minute 29s, you would imagine, in absolutely no time at all. And here is the championship leader and probably the champion-elect. There is our 29 straight away. Lifeback was very strong last week in Suzuka, but had to fall down the order come the end of the race, courtesy of a corner-cutting penalty. Armateo into second place, 30 flat. Here comes Oscar, championship leader. Does he move to the top? Well, second place at the moment, just under 2 tenths down on Lifebout's time. And the second McLaren of Volokongan, that is only P5.
Yeah, not the greatest start for Volokongan, but Lifebout, we saw how strong he was at Suzuka, especially over one lap. He's come into this season late and already made a big statement. Evan Nye goes on a 130.4, seeing times coming in. Silo goes up into second position. Strong time, the second driver, into the 1 minute 29s. I was expecting drivers maybe to get towards the mid 129s potentially, but that's pretty good going to get there on just the first runs, as I've watched the Lawrence absolutely plough himself himself into that pit wall and have a very heavy impact. Dirt goes slap bang into the middle of the field pretty much on 130.1. Fraser, I think, is the only other driver running out there on track. We saw Yasir Saki, as I think he always does in qualifying, retiring, as he had an off, I believe. He's actually out the session entirely. Not sure if that's a connection issue. He was struggling to get in earlier, so not quite sure what the nature of that is. Hopefully he can get himself back involved later on, but yeah, his session came to an end down there, I believe, at that turn 7, 8 and 9 complex, as Fraser is on his way still, but I don't think this is a particularly hell for leather lap, as the sector time's a bit down on most of the other drivers. So Lifeboat really winning the early exchanges, and you know, he's come into this season late, of course a dominant force once in PSF too, but he's come in and he's well, he didn't get the result he was after at Suzuka. He's shown some mighty pace already.
100%. A lot of resilience he had to show in Suzuka with that 3-second penalty. He was battling so hard, but in the end just ran out of steam, which is what dropped him out of the podium places. But we know the pace that he has got in that Alpine car, trying to help Alpine keep the championship battle in the constructors alive. Fraser is the slowest of the times we've had so far, and by some tune as well. 30.9, half second off the next closest car, and 1.1 down on Lifeboat's provisional pole time. So 10 of the 14 drivers getting a lap on the board straight away. We saw Lawrence throw it in the barriers a couple of times. Interesting strategy from himself. He's got the car fixed up and a brand new set of boots on. You would imagine your own also yet to get a time on the board. I think that was an invalidation. Not too many corners that you've got to think about the track limits really. Maybe if you're a bit lazy going through turn 6, 7, 8 and 9. Also through turn 12, if you cut the inside curb just that little bit too much, it'll probably spit you into the barrier on the left or on the right, depending on whether you get understeer over the curb or a little bit of oversteer for your troubles. But you can get invalidated and have that red track map come up saying that you've been a naughty driver and you're going to have to go again.
Yeah, always a danger, of course, especially in qualifying. I don't think it really matters what track it is. Generally, tracks where, you know, you'd be shocked to see a track limits penalty in the race. If you're pushing the boundaries over a single lap, especially late in the session, those errors can happen, and that is why we've mentioned it so many times this season. It is important to get a good lap on the board early, so those mistakes that are inevitably going to creep in at the limit aren't going to have quite as much of an impact, and who knows, if you get it all right, you could be in business. So just under 8 minutes gone in the session. Most of the drivers have elected to stay sat in the pit lane. We've got Lawrence and Lafite, I think, are the first drivers to dart themselves back out looking for a second run. So Lifeboat in a dominant spot at the moment from Silo, and we're seeing a little bit of a mix-up in the order, I would say, compared to what we're used to, the likes of Volokong and Marius Formula, usually an extremely strong driver over one lap. It is, of course, still early in the session, and a lot of drivers will think they've got much more to do, but this is a track that's very unique in nature, and I think we could see some surprises in this session in terms of where all these drivers stand.
100%. Different set of skills that you need really to get your way around this lap. Just want to have a little bit of a chat about slipstream on your corner lap, because we saw there the outlaps. Lawrence and Lafferty were very close together. Lafferty backing off as you would probably expect, but around a track like this, when you've got the length of straight you do, going from turn 12 into turn 14, is there an argument to say that maybe you can negate the effects of a little bit of dirt here if you can get a nice toe on that massive straight? And you'll get it again, of course, from the run out of turn 16 as you cut the beam to end your lap.
It can make a massive difference, I think, at the kind of speeds these guys are hitting. I mean, you're talking 350 k's an hour some of these guys are getting up to on that back straight, and at that sort of speed, the drag that you can lose just by getting a little bit of a hole in the air punched in front of you by the car in front, it can make a huge difference to your speed. I do wonder if that's going to be a strategy. Of course, on the last game, we had the no collisions in qualifying, no combat slipstreaming was allowed. In this case now, well, I'm not sure where the league stands on it. It is a possibility, at least in theory. We'll see how that's going to go down. I was keeping an eye on Lawrence out there. I don't know, it says he's still in an outlap, but I thought he was out earlier. Lafferty is circulating, though, on the track behind and going pretty well. Just a couple of tenths of a second up, so maybe he can get himself, at the very least, onto that second row. Maybe he can find a little bit more if he can get a good run through the end of the lap as he heads for one of the biggest braking zones on the entire Formula 1 calendar. Down into the chicane, flicking it through it over the curbs, gets a nice clean exit, no invalidation. He's going to run it flat out all the way to the lane. He does run out of battery. Most of these drivers seem to be doing that. It is one of the few tracks that you use absolutely all of that battery, and it's a 130 flat. Goes fractionally behind Oscar and a fraction ahead of the defending champion Matteo. So solid lap from Lafite. He's showing some good pace once again.
Still time on the board for him because he didn't actually improve in that final sector. Lost a tiny bit of time, but you can see him really cranking on the steering lock as he is into the braking zone off turn number 14, trying to get the front end to bite. It is a strategy drivers like to employ in qualifying in particular, to try and get the front end to work and manipulate it how they like to. But in the race, you're just going to be a bit more careful because it can absolutely shred your front tyres. Armateo collapsed the wall, though, coming through turn number 12. He was down by a quarter of a tenth. I think he may lose a little bit more time, the reigning champion. Obviously going to be deposed at the end of the season. Was absent for a decent portion of it midway through the campaign. Got a yellow flag as well. I think that's just a Mercedes going slowly. Potentially Lauren's out there who didn't set that time. I agree with you. He definitely... It looked like he was on an outlap twice. So I don't know whether he was on that outlap and then went into the pits and went again. We'll have to see what happens on that one. But here comes the reigning champion, Armateo. Looked fairly steady going through 14, 15 and 16. Pulling gears all the way up to the line. Once again, a driver with very limited battery left. Don't want to run out at all because... you're going to lose a little bit of time. Does find improvement, though, in that final set, despite hitting the wall through 12, but stays in the 130.0. As Marius Fawn with a decent improvement as well. And there is Oscar getting a little bit of a slipstream, and the championship leads up by nearly 2/10.
He's got a bit of battery to use too on the run down towards the line. He takes an awful lot of the curb through number 15, but manages to keep it nice and stable on the exit. He's going to burn the remainder of his battery. They really take it right to the limit here. This track's so demanding for that ERS. Watch for that in the race too. It's a 129.7 though, and he goes to the top of the timesheets. Lifeboat was going quicker in the first two sectors, but he's elected to bail out of that one. Silo was going quick at the start of the lap, but it's a more cautious run through the final chicane compared to that of Oscar. Can he find the time though? Just under 2/10 down. Still got the last of that battery to use in the Kick Sauber car. Currently sitting third in the session. Moves to P2. Just edged out by Oscar by about 200 of a second. So good run from him, but it is the championship leader out on top in this session. Volakongen found some time too, but still buried back there in P7. He's got some work to do later on in the session.
Incredibly close, isn't it? From P4 down into P8 is just over 1/10 of a second. You've got to be very, very precise at certain parts of this track. Fraser in the Haas is not going particularly quickly. I wonder if he's bailed out of this one and recharged the battery to go again. 34.6 is not a time that you'll be particularly proud about. Here's your own. Hasn't got a time on the board, and it will stay that way because that Sauber is returning to the pits for the second time, failing to get a lap time completed. So under a little bit of pressure into the back half of this qualifying session, along with Lawrence, who is also back in the pit lane. But there is the championship leader standing up. Decent banker lap of a 30 flat, taking a quarter of a second out of it to dip into the 129.7s. That's just over 200ths of a second in his back pocket over Silo, who over one lap in particular, since they've come in midway through the season, has looked very competitive.
Certainly has indeed, and a couple of good results too in Silverstone and also in the Hungarian Grand Prix, and looks maybe to repeat that feat further down the line. Seems like the only driver who's on a proper flying lap is Fraser. He's had a really scruffy run through this session. Second lap on these tyres and he clips the wall heading out of the critical turn at 12. He is finding time, but if I'm being honest, nowhere near enough with everyone now dipping into the very least the low 130s. He's going to need a bit more pace than that, of course. With that error we saw at 12 and also with the added lack of grip from those tyres, it may already be fading away out there. Of course, tyre wear isn't too high around this track, but it still makes a big difference. He's heading up to the line. His fuel light is on. I do wonder if he's going to actually see this lap through. He is. At the very least, he wants to try and find some semblance of time, but I think it's still going to be P10, and it is a good improvement to a 30.3, but still adrift at the back of the field. 4 minutes to go.
Does get himself, though, within touching distance, you could say, of that group in front. Evan Nye on a 30.1, Marius Formula 30.1, Volokong and Dirk Lafty, Armateo 30 flat. So there's only 3/10 down. If he can find a decent chunk on that final lap, then he'll be more than satisfied with that after starting slightly compromised, it has to be said. Couple of attempts at it, had a 30.9 as the banker, which is not competitive at all in this division. So to take half a second out of it on the second attempt, I imagine that's also on the same set of tyres. I think that'll be okay for Fraser, but still needs to find a little bit more. Less than 4 minutes to go in qualifying. It is the championship leader still leading the way, just about ahead of Silo in the Sauber. Lifeboat, Armateo and Lafty completing the top 5. This is something we've seen a couple of times from Lifeboat, actually, is always been very competitive from the start of qualifying. Gets a good lap in straight away, but on occasion has struggled to find improvement as the session progresses.
Yeah, I don't know if it's either he's able to dial it in a bit quicker than the other drivers and has already reached his potential, or if mistakes are creeping in the runs to come. Of course, we can see potentially an answer to that further down the line. If he can improve, he's still very close, only just over a tenth of a second shy of the top time of Oscar, so he's still very much in the hunt, and just those three, Oscar, Silo, Lifeboat, under the 90-second barrier. We're in a real calm before the storm at this stage, as I believe we're finally getting movement down there. Mateo's heading out onto the track, just under 3 minutes to go in the session, so it's going to be a late flurry of laps to end things off here in Sin City. It is Oscar on top, the championship leader, looking to stab his authority on this field, looking to put it almost out of reach and beyond any doubt to the rest, but there are still a number of drivers out there hungry for more. So we're going to get a big finish to this qualifying session. Everyone now heading out there. Mateo's going to be first up, still looking to regain some honour. He's not going to be the champion this season, but he can certainly show what he's capable of on a game that he hasn't very much enjoyed, but he's still going to give it a go. Currently fourth in the session. Oscar on top. Lots of drivers though heading out there. It's going to be fast and furious here in Sin City. Oscar leads the way. We'll see if anyone else can challenge.
Definitely possible with how close it is at the moment. Silo just 0.02 of a second down on the championship leader. Is part of a little gaggle of cars going through the middle sector. We've got a Mercedes in there. We've got an Alpine of Lifeboat as well. They're very close together. Silo absolutely bouncing over the curbs at turn 12. Interesting strategy there. Don't want to be pushing it too hard, because if you take that curb too aggressively, even on an outlap, you can just find yourself with a little bit of a Code Brown moment, and you don't want that when you're very much in the game to try and pick up your first pole position. But here is the reigning champion going to be deposed, currently holding P4. 30 flat, will want to get into the 1 minute 29s, but is there enough time in that Aston Martin to try and challenge Oscar right at the sharp end? 2 minutes to go in the session, and Mateo is going to blast around the final corner to kick off the final runs. How much time can he find in that beautiful green machine, the Aston Martin car? Cranks on the steering lock into turn 1, flowing through 3 and 4, trying to keep it as tight as possible without clipping the wall. Can be a bit of an understeery corner, understeering boat, especially this Aston Martin sometimes, but he does rotate it nicely. And next, very heavy brakies over turn 5. Another corner with a bit of a pinch point at the apex. The curb on the inside can be quite aggressive. Bit of a lock up and just rubbing up against the barriers there. Improves though, and improves by a decent chunk.
I didn't think he'd be too happy with turn 1, but in the end, it's turned out to be a decent first sector, and he takes the curbs nicely, heading through turn 7, 8, and now how's the traction on the way out? It's good. He's taking a bit of contact with the walls, but I think he's okay with it. So long as he's not damaging the car, it can actually help stabilize the car on exit sometimes, and the drivers may be using that. Now heading up towards turn 12, probably the most important corner on the track. Lots of curb on the inside, manages to just straighten up the car for the exit. He's still just over a tenth of a second up, but that's good. At least challenge the drivers in front. But if he does manage to pull out a solid end to the lap. Now DRS is going to open. Watch the speed climb. He's got some low wings on that car. He hits the 348 kilometers an hour, but then the speed starts to bleed away as he turns off the battery. On the brakes hard and towards the chicane. Takes so much curb on the inside, and that is going to spell the end of it for the reigning champion. He will not find time out there. How is Silo? He's the next driver on the road in the kick Sauber. Runs wide of the apex though, and that is going to be an invalidation at the second part of that chicane. As they start to push the margins, the mistakes do creep in. Lawrence is next up on the track, but he's easing off, heading out that final corner. Who's going to be next? It's going to be Lifeboat. He's certainly finding time, and he's going to get a tow on the run to the line from the Mercedes in front. This is a big help. Does he catapult himself to pole position? You bet he does. Out on top in qualifying. Let's see if anyone can stand up to it. So heading up towards the line, Euro goes up into 4th place. Solid late improvement from the kick Sauber. Mario's formula does find a good lap in the end. Oscar though is nearly a full tenth of a second up. Can he snatch pole position away from the Dutchman heading up to the line? The championship leader, is he on top once again in PSF1? Yes he is for the moment. He goes into the 129.6. Is there anyone that can challenge that?
It's teaming up to P6 just into the 29s. I don't think anybody else is going to be up there though. Lafty in the RB is entering the pit lane. Another one that's invalidated. We wait for Dirk and we wait for Fraser. They are not finding the time that we'll see them challenge the McLaren at the sharp end. Dirk is actually, Fraser, well, Dirk is also invalidated. Both of them invalidated now, and he whacks the barrier in frustration. You would expect. Very, very close though. The gap from 4th down to Dirk in P10 is just under a tenth and a half. That shows how competitive it is. It's competitive at the sharp end as well. There are a couple of strikes. Mateo didn't improve invalidated. Silo didn't improve, invalidated. Lifebat had a helping hand over the line to find half a tenth, but Oscar just found that little bit more, and the championship leader likes what he's doing, and he's very much doing what he likes, taking yet another pole position in this lovely little run, setting him up beautifully to all but seal the championship in about 40 minutes time.
It is a perfect 3 pole positions from the last 3 Grand Prix. Made victories out of the last 2. Is this one going to go the same way? He peps life out to the pole, and it is Silo joining them near the front of the grid. Bit of a gap back to Mario's formula. He'll be glad to come out in front of that little cluster from Euron and Volakongan, who just misses out on 5th place by a solitary 1,000th of a second. Mateo follows next on a 30-point flat. Then Lafferty, Evan Nye and Dark round out the top 10 behind that. Fraser never really got going on that session. Ditto for Lawrence and Yasusaki and Azim. Well, we saw Azim out of the session. I think he was having some big issues, so had to call it a night. Yasusaki predictably not getting a lap time in. So yes, Oscar, he's put himself in the ideal position once again, but this track not quite as easy to convert a pole position as Suzuka, so we'll see in the race to come.
100%. Definitely opportunities for drivers to overtake. Suzuka was a bit of a DRS train, bit of a slogfest for some of the drivers that were trying their best to make up places. Volakonga was working incredibly hard to try and recover as many spots as he possibly could. He was one of the drivers that was just stuck in a bit of a DRS train after a poor qualifying. Add on a poor first lap, he found himself mired in the midfield. Eventually worked his way through to keep himself within touching distance of his teammate in the championship, but still with quite the mountain to climb, and he has to do the same because Oscar's on pole once more and Volakonga is buried in the midfield. P6 I think it is for that second McLaren car. There's definitely more work to be done.
Oh, we're about to get going into the race though. I'll hand over to you, Tom.
Very, very quick start as Yasusaki's jumped in. He's got a drive-through penalty. I think we're going to be doing a restart here as we slam it into the barriers. The Alpine's up in the air. And Oscar, he nearly got through turn 1 first, but Asalba's absolutely cleaned him up. And then he's been attacked by his teammate into the tyre wall as well. That was probably not what we were expecting. I think there may have been some kind of issue going on. We're going to divert our attention to, of course, the PSGL PSF1 Discord to see if any funny business has gone on. But there was our faux start. We didn't quite get going there. And we'll have to wait to see what can happen. I think it might have been that Azim couldn't get in there. So we're restarting to get him back in. Who won the fake race, by the way? We can have a look. It was Lafferty starting from P8. Well done to himself. Gets himself 6 points for his championship battle. But yes, we're just going to have to hold fire for the time being. What this does mean, though, strategically, it's very much akin to what we saw at the end of F1 24. Because we've got this reset, drivers are going to get all of their soft compound tyres handed back to them.
Yeah, and that could certainly play a role if we will do indeed get any potential safety cars at the race, which is a very distinct possibility at this track. Just looking into the paddock of the Discord server, as we like to say, yeah, we've decided to accommodate Azim. That is why we're deciding to have this lobby reset. So we're just going to get things restarted and reset, and hopefully, yeah, we can get him Azim back in, and whatever issues that he's had with his game can get sorted. So hopefully we can clear that up in short order and we can get the race underway. A bit of a detour from the usual quick fire runs that we've had on this game, so a little bit of downtime and then we can get this tour of Las Vegas underway.
I was very surprised. I was going to congratulate everybody for getting through the setups and getting through the strategy in record time. As it turned out, though, we were going to be restarting. And Yasusaki making sure of that. We might be getting Finlay in there as well, although he can't get on the game, so that might be a no. We will be limited to just 14 drivers, which is disappointing. We say it every week. We'd like the attendances to be just that little bit higher. The season is ending very shortly, though, so maybe we'll have a bit of a refresh in PSGL PSF1. We do have the time, though, to just have a little bit of a chinwag about sim racing setups once again, because they are the best in the business. If you want to find that little bit more performance or a lot of performance, depending on how quick you already are, sim racing setups with the pro setups, they can get you on that pathway. Created and developed by the very drivers here in PSGL that you see every week, grinding it out. Esports and stable setups available for every single track. Quali and race setups, dry and wet setups, optimal race strategies as well. And you will get the free updates when they come. All setups are available for £49.49 over at simracingsetup.com. And remember to use the code PSGL at checkout. 5% discount just to make you enjoy those setups even more than you already will.
Yes, and indeed, make sure to have a look at that. Of course, yeah, I mean, we've got so many drivers been blown away by what they've been able to accomplish with sim racing setups. So make sure to go and check that out. So what we're going to do is we're just going to get a quick look at the grid, get a custom grid set up, and then we should be able to get things moving in very short order. So yeah, that should hopefully get us going very, very soon. Oscar, though, we talked about his recent form, and he's certainly backing that up once again. What I was mentioning, though, in the Little Medium was that this track is a bit different from what we saw last week at Suzuka in terms of the opportunities for drivers behind. You're much more vulnerable at the front of the race than you would be at the Japanese Grand Prix circuit. So watch out for that in the race. Certainly more opportunities for overtaking, a bit more flexibility on strategy. The tyre area isn't terribly high around this track, but you do have options for starting on either the medium or the hard tyre. And as we kind of alluded to earlier as well, the odd safety car can certainly creep in at this circuit as well. We don't hope for incidents, but they're certainly very, very possible at a track as chaotic as Las Vegas.
We don't hope, for instance, but sometimes they can just make things a little bit more exciting. What we can do, hopefully this is going to work, because sometimes it does and sometimes it doesn't. There it is. There's the track map, the Las Vegas circuit. You know it, the upside-down pig track, as it has been known now. The overtaking opportunities may be on the run down into turn 1 because you are flat from 16 through the flat-out 17, unless it is wet, of course. That is very much not going to be flat-out if you're running the intermediate or the full wet tyres. You have to try and dance around the outside. Inside turns to outside. Outside turns to inside when you go through 1, 2, 3 and 4. And of course we are going to be seeing DRS passes on the run from turn 12. If you can get your exit nailed, you're going to be setting yourself up for a very, very healthy run all the way down into turn number 14, where it is a heavy braking zone and it's a big pinch point at the apex. The curves, when you're running side by side, you do just have to leave that little bit more space, because if the driver you're racing goes over the curb, hits the curb badly, that in turn is going to affect you negatively as well.
Yeah, a lot of the curbs at this track are essentially landmines, especially at that turns 14, 15 and 16 complex. And that is, of course, where so much of the racing takes place at this track. Even potentially you can get a run into turn 5 and then you may be fighting all the way down towards turn number 9, and well, that's certainly a sketchy part of the track to be going side by side. There's plenty of opportunities though, and these drivers that have qualified a little bit lower will be a bit more optimistic about their chances than they were a week ago. So let's see how that's going to unfold. Quick mention as well, there is I believe no set weather. It's not been set to match the race that we had earlier, so anything can happen. Of course, PSF2 actually just an hour or so ago, we did have rain in qualifying. So even though we are in Vegas, that doesn't mean that the weather is set in stone, although my hopes and dreams may be dashed as we get into the race, and it seems as though they have, Tom.
I had my fingers crossed. I was hoping for maybe a little splash of rain just to make things even more unpredictable than they already were going to be. We were going to get the live run. If it was going to be raining, that would have been a lot of fun. But it is going to be dry. We don't, of course, know whether it's going to get wet as the race progresses. So we'll just hold our horses on that one, and maybe we can learn a bit about what the strategy is going to be and what the weather's going to do by the tyres the drivers elect to start on. Oscar starting from pole, his main rival in the championship, Volokongan, back in P6. That's been the trend really in the last few weeks. Oscar's typically started on pole, or at worst on the front row, and Volokongan, as he's been trying to chase him down in the absence of Alex Loeffler and Owen, has been just qualifying that little bit further back. Not the best over one lap, but is a very consistent race driver.
Yeah, and that may come into effect very nicely here tonight. We'll just have to wait and see. Of course, incidents can happen, and they can either benefit or or be a detriment to your chances, depending on where you get caught up in that. As this is an actual start, we're not going to get quite the quick turnaround that we saw as we headed into that faux race earlier on, so maybe just waiting for a minute or two before we get things underway and we can get this started. Of course, it's an exceptionally short run heading into turn 1, so converting the pole position isn't generally much of an issue here. You don't have to worry about much of a slipstream, but later in the race, that's certainly not going to be the case.
Not a long run down to turn 1, but it is a wide circuit. Opportunities are plenty. We are racing here at Las Vegas. Who can hit the jackpot? Or will it be Oscar taking another big step towards the championship crown? Down the inside, having a look at his lifeboat. They battled it out a week ago in Japan, but just hanging on is the McLaren of Oscar, keeping his hand right at the front end of the field. Now Silo sinking his teeth into the Alpine of Lifeboat. Go from attack to defence very, very quickly. And on the inside, we've got a Mercedes slamming it into the barrier at the back. Surely it's going to be a safety car. Definitely full course yellows. Can't see Bernd Mylander making their way out of the pit lane just yet. I think both Mercedes have been caught up in that one. Evan Nye with no front wing, sparking away at the back is Lawrence, missing the front left tyre and his front wing as well. We don't have the full course caution. It is a virtual safety car, I believe. Oscar holding on to the lead of the race, and that was quite the dramatic start as Lawrence was catapulted up into the air.
Yeah, dramatic collision between the two Mercedes cars, and very costly for both of their races. Evan Nye, of course, will be hoping against hope that this VSC lasts for as long as possible.
It's more
so he
contact.
Can get himself darted into the pit lane, and more contact in the field, and Lafferty picking up a penalty there.
He's got half a front wing as well, so some shenanigans have definitely gone on, and Lafferty's going to be forward through the field very quickly. You would expect 3 wide as well as we go through turn number 11. Yasir Saki holding on to places. More contact into the wall, just a bit of a squeeze applied to Fraser, and I think there's more carbon fibre confetti being thrown up. Yes, the Haas missing their left-hand end plate. Adam tucked up underneath the rear wing of all 2 of them in front of him, and they're going to be 3 wide. You would expect out in front. Oscar just about clinging on to the lead of the race, although Silo getting closer by the second. Adam gets past Fraser. The battle for the lead is hotting up. Silo looking out down the inside, but doesn't think about it. Under braking will hold station in second for the time being.
Expect pit stops at the end of this lap, in particular the cars at the rear of the field, Fraser and Evan Nye. They'll certainly be getting off of those tyres. Actually, Fraser may decide to soldier on with the damage he has, but he's going to be extremely compromised, already struggling to live with the drivers out in front without that extra downforce. It's so costly to your pace, especially in this company. So we head on to the second lap with just the one driver, Evan Nye, heading into the pit lane. He's had a great start to life in PSF1, but I think he's going to be hoping for much better fortune later on in the Grand Prix. So down the line they go. Lafferty's been distanced a little bit. He's also missing an end plate and just trying to soldier on out there. So a very incident-packed first lap has scattered the field out here in Vegas. Lafferty trying to get himself back into play, but through every single time they flick the car into any of these corners, especially those sweepers, turns 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, that's going to be very costly to your overall pace. It may be good for a straight line speed, but as evidenced by the amount of battery he's burning trying to live with the cars in front, his pace just cannot quite live with the 7 drivers in front of him.
Interestingly, in P3, Lifeboat looks a little bit all over the place, was deep into turn number 1, was deep into turn 7 as well, has managed to just put a little bit of distance between himself and his teammate Marius Formel, who's had a very decent start. But as we return to the battle between first and second, the lead might just be changing hands here, because Silo has DRS, Oscar of course does not. And with the aid of that rear wing flap opening, Silo will take the lead for the very first time. The championship leader, Champion-elect, dropping down into second place with the 2 Alpines in hot pursuit. Volokonga gaining a place on the opening lap. Big gap forming from Armateo back to Dirk, who has managed to dispose of Lafferty. Yasir Saki following through as well. This is one of the few circuits where you can sort of get away with having a little bit of front wing damage. Look at that, your own desperately trying to find the smallest gap to get past Volokonga around turn 17. Can't follow up into turn 1, almost pushing Volokonga, saying, come on, get on with it, mate. I want to pick up a free place if I can, but has to stay in P6 for the time being. Got to be careful of the reigning champion as well. Has Armateo maybe got a little bit of damage there? Right-hand end plate potentially. We're just going to stay off board to see if we can see it. No, left-hand end plate that he is missing.
Yeah, left-hand end plate on that Aston Martin. He does seem to have plenty of race pace out there, because he's been pressuring your own throughout the entirety of these first 2 laps, but that's not going to help him one bit, especially in terms of the tyre, where Dirk has been released, finally getting held up by Lafferty, and he is in very short order worked his way up towards the top 7. So those hard tyres working really nicely for the Ferrari. They are good around this circuit in terms of pace right out of the box. He's working himself up there very, very nicely. And yeah, Lafferty unable to quite live with it, as is Fraser. They drop further down to the rear of the field. Silo leads the way though, heading away from Oscar. He seems to have plenty of race pace out there, but does Oscar want to try and take the lead back for himself? This straight does seem long enough for some old school DRS exchanges. We haven't seen many of these on this new game with the increased dirty air cars not able to follow as closely. Silo can't quite hold him off. Oscar gets through, but it's a more of a serene picture at the front of this field. These guys, they're swapping places, but they haven't got it into it yet.
Lafferty continues to tumble through the field. You can see the extent of the front wing there is pretty much missing the entire right-hand side of that front wing plank, and that is going to be difficult to deal with. But what we were saying earlier is that this is one of the tracks where you can potentially get away with having a little bit of damage, maybe not quite as substantial damage that Lafferty's got, but because you're going to be running low wings anyway, I wouldn't be surprised if a couple of drivers have actually gone for 0-0 wings just to try and maximise the speed, the top end speed, the terminal velocity they can gain down that run or through the run from 12 to the braking zone of turn number 14. Won't be affecting you as much as it will at higher downforce circuits, but I definitely don't want to be in Lafferty's shoes with the damage he's got.
No, certainly. I mean, you can see Fraser in front of him has managed to stabilise the situation somewhat, but Lafferty, I think his damage much more severe. It doesn't really come across visually from here, but, well, I think the proof is in the pudding. Look at how quickly he's dropping back from the drivers in front, and he's, like Evan Nye, going to be hoping, I imagine, for a late safety car. It seems as though overtaking in the DRS train itself is pretty hard. It seems effortless for these top two with the car in front, not getting any of that assistance and reduction and drag. So Silo and Oscar are simply able to exchange this lead lap after lap after lap without much intervention from any of the drivers behind. They're following at reasonable distances here, but I think with everyone running, as you said, quite low or even 0-0 wings, there aren't those discrepancies in the top speed these guys are going to be accomplishing. Silo looking to the inside, but this time hesitates. He was catching him right near the end of the straight, and I think he thought better of that one. So Oscar does retain the lead for a full lap, and as Silo backs off, it does bring Lifeboat just that little bit nearer. He does still have the DRS though to protect himself if need be, but yeah, he wasn't quite able to draw alongside Oscar there, managing to sit behind and bide his time. But at the moment these are more parries or just opening exchanges, little light jabs being flicked between these top two before the real battle will kick off in the laps to come.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Because you don't really want to... Oh, big wobble there for Oscar going through turn number 4. Just keeps it pointing on the straight and narrow. Maybe with a little bit of filling in his underpants after that one, though, because he definitely had to catch the slide. Closing into the brake zone of 5 is Silo, but of course not darted up the inside. And that's a similar story to what we saw at the end of the previous lap. You don't really want to go for a 50-50 or maybe a 40-60 move into turn number 14 because of the pinch point at the apex. It can get very, very tight. You don't want to ruin your race going for a half send, really, especially when you're batting for the lead of the race. I think Silo playing that one fairly sensibly.
Yeah, I would agree with that. If he's catching him at a point that's a bit awkward for both drivers, especially, it could put them at more threat. That's the kind of opportunity that the likes of Lifeboat, Marius Formula, those two chasing Alpines, are going to be looking for. So Silo, we'll see what he does on this lap. At the moment, this seems to be the main point of action. Lifeboat is burning a lot of battery, trying to see if he can catch Silo napping, but it doesn't seem as though that opportunity is going to be afforded on this lap. And Silo looks as though he's going to draw alongside Oscar. Is he going to go through and commit to the move? Oscar's got to be careful though. Lifeboat, he can try and be opportunistic here, gaining on the McLaren but not quite gaining quickly enough. Can he look for a better exit though? Better fortunes on the way out. It doesn't seem as though he's near enough. Oscar managing to recover the situation nicely, but that's what Lifeboat needs. It's the classic example of being third in the DRS train. Your best chance of moving up is just staying close, applying that pressure. Hope maybe you get near enough that the driver in first place without DRS gets swamped on that back straight. It happens so often on the last game. Doesn't happen as much on this game, but I tell you what, compared to a lot of the other tracks we've seen on this game, Tom, these drivers up at the front able to follow each other with very short distance.
100%. Everybody keeping themselves in the game. Interestingly enough, Silo not recharging battery going down on the run into turn number 4. The McLaren was flashing, the two Alpines were flashing, as is the second McLaren of Volakongen, who's slightly wide into turn number 5. And interestingly, only 3 constructors in the top 6. The 2 Saubers, the 2 McLarens, and the 2 Alpines sandwiched in between them. Mateo just being kept on his toes ever so slightly. That gap did extend out to 0.8 of a second between himself and the Sauber of Jeroen, but at the end of the previous lap there was a big wobble for Jeroen coming through turn 16, had to catch the car, got all crossed up, and that allowed Mateo to just return to a comfortable following distance of around half a second to 6 or 7/10 of a second. No real brakes in the DRS train. I say that, no brakes at all in the DRS train until you get to Lafferty, who is hampered, hobbled by that front wing damage. The 2 Alpines very close as well, coming through turn number 12. Marius Formula following in the footsteps of his teammate. teammate. Oscar also not particularly close to the back of Silo and could be looking in his mirrors rather than looking through his halo, because Lifebite is gaining at an alarming rate. Mario's Formula following him as well. Recharge the battery lights, all four of them in this leading quartet, getting very close to the back of Silo. Is Oscar into the braking zone? Mario's Formula also putting his teammate under some significant pressure as Volokongan plays the spectator role.
Yeah, I think there was a little bit of a heart-and-mouth moment for the second of the Alpines as he nearly clattered the rear wing of his teammate, managed to avoid it. He's pressuring him though up towards turn bottom. Watch for Volokongan too, around the outside, tries to take advantage and break up this Alpine party. Round the outside of 1 and 2, inside of 3 and 4. Is he going to get pinched in there? He's got a tight line, but he's managed to get himself just that car like the head, and he can squeeze himself to the outside. Brilliant driving from Volokongan. That's the opportunism that he needs, and he may be looking for another one then. Up towards Lifebound he goes. He elects to back out of that one, not looking to send anything too hasty, but that was a really lovely bit of driving as Mario's Formula tried to apply the pressure on his teammate. In the end he was caught out, and Volokongan, well, that's why he's worked himself into this championship fight. Typically brilliant racecraft, just the one car separating him and his teammate. He'd have certainly taken that situation at the start of the race.
Yeah, and you have to say Mario's absolutely pocket pinched there. He was maybe a little bit too tentative. He was all over the back of his teammate, but his indecision in, do I want to go for it into turn 1? Do I want to sit behind? Volokongan said, thank you very much. The red carpet has been rolled out. The white flag thrown as well, as Marius had to concede defeat. And as the position dropped and he gets himself inside, in between the two Alpine cars. I'll tell you what, he's got to be careful of your own as well in the Sauber. He was looking very racy in the opening couple of laps. Calmed down a little bit, but if he sees an opportunity, you can bet your bottom dollar he's going to go for it. Volokongan now cruising up to the back of Lifebound. Now the second Alpine in the battle for 3rd and 4th. And once again, as we saw last week in Suzuka, as we saw in Kota a couple of weeks ago, at this stage, this phase of the race, Oscar very happy just to sit in behind and look after those tyres. Dirk and Yasisaki both following each other very wide down to turn number 40, but just about keeping it out of the barriers. Got to be careful of Adam. Look at this though, Marius Faulkner under pressure again. Deja vu from the previous lap, although this time it's the Sauber charging around the outside. Marius Faulkner has the inside line, but just gets pinched on the curb at your own, falls off the circuit almost taking a trip to Narnia because he went very, very deep. He thought he had the place won and done, but just getting a little bit too optimistic there and losing out in that battle for 5th place. Matteo was also very wide as well through turn 4. He's going to be having to go defensive, moving over to the middle of the track. Bit of bumping and grinding between himself and Dirk. The hard tyres working nicely. Dances around the outside. Has he overcooked it? The answer is yes. Just about keeps it out of the wall, but doesn't get 7th place.
Yeah, he tried to go for it on the brakes, and again, lunging to the inside, and they asked contact on the apex. Dirk, I think he was optimistic, looking for space there. He's still absolutely chomping at the bit though, and of course he is putting Matteo off to the point where Matteo struggling to keep in that DRS. He's going to have a very important run through turn 12 to stay with the group in front. Dirk, yeah, just overcooking that, as you said, heading into turn number 5. Tried to put it to bed on the brakes, but didn't quite manage to work out, and Matteo's managed to recover somewhat, and he seems to be just about fine. He can resist him with that DRS to defend himself heading down the back straight, so all seems to be somewhat well. Up at the front though, they're bunching all the way up. Oscar getting up behind Silo, and he's got to go for this because Lifebout is hounding him from behind. So Oscar, he's okay to yield that one to Silo on the entrance, but as Silo is compromised on the run through, this may be the opportunity that the Alpine driver behind was looking for. So 1, 2 and 3, they charge down the straight as there's a massive pit stops behind them that could throw a spanner into the works as we head on to the 9th lap. Silo ahead of Oscar, ahead of Lifebout. No change amongst the top 3. They burn straight up, but have they all been caught napping there? How strong is this undercut going to be with 5 drivers now headed for the pit lane for fresh hearts?
Very interesting. Surely you would think they have to react now. I don't think they would have expected 5 cars, the 5 cars trailing behind them in the DRS train, all to hop into the pit lane to get a fresh set of boots on. Leaves Dirk in a little bit of a sticky situation, 2 seconds off the back of the trio in front, although he's not going to be stopping for another few laps, trying to take those hard tyres as far as he possibly can. Maybe goal hang for a bit of a safety car as well. Always a possibility here at Las Vegas. Clouting the curbs goes Lifebound. It is his hot pursuit of the 2 drivers in front. There's the first penalty for corner cutting. Yasisaki with 3 seconds. I think Lafferty's was 10 seconds for a collision under the safety car. That's where he picked up the majority of his front wing damage. But what we saw on the previous lap was a perfect microcosm of the battling and the racecraft you have to show around this circuit. If you're in the middle, you are in a just slightly between the rock and a hard place, you have to say, because Oscar had to almost go for that on Silo, because if he didn't, Lifebound would have lapped that up, moved up into 2nd place, and Oscar would have been dropping a further place back. And then when he comes to the pit stops, if indeed everybody does get undercut, these 3 lose out to the likes of Volokong and Marius Formula, Eurone and Armateur, who have boxed. He's going to find himself in a very difficult place on the circuit as he does take the lead now from Silo. How things can change in the space of just a lap.
Yeah, he may be looking to try and get into the pits on this lap, so it may be a very good time to get himself out in front. That's exactly what he was thinking. Silo responding to that. Lifeboat staying out, interestingly enough. Well, we're going to get a gauge at this stage in the race at how powerful this undercut may be. So 1 and 2, Oscar, Silo and Lifeboat assumes the lead of the race. Now pushing on with Clean Air. Clean Air has certainly served Dirk very well in this lap. He's closing right up towards the Alpine and dropping Yasuosaki and Azim from behind. So into the pits now comes the two drivers who've been controlling this race, but will they be controlling this race anymore? Volokongan leading the charge on the drivers behind. He's sweeping around the outside of turn 1 and he's managed to jump his teammate. Look at that. That is the power of the undercut with the drivers running so close. Oscar getting those tyres up to temperature and fired up. You can see off Mario's formula, and Volokongan, who struggled at the end of this first stint, he managed to regain that position from Mario's formula and he's moved all the way up to the front of the race with just a 1 lap undercut. That is phenomenal stuff from the Norwegian driver, and I think that may mean that the current race leader Lifeboat could be in big trouble here.
100%, because look at Silo, now right at the back of this 6-car group, only Mateo in his wake. He's fallen behind his teammate. There was first down to 6th when Euron jumped into the pits, and you would imagine, like you said, the Lifeboat is going to come out probably off the back of this group, maybe in a bit of no man's land. No DRS from himself, and Volokong just trying to put some air between himself and his teammate, also catching Lafferty hand over fist, and he's going to hold on to this net race lead courtesy of the DRS that he's going to get from the RB in front. He should blast past the ailing RB of Lafferty, still struggling with that front wing damage, and everybody else is going to try and hot-footed after Volokong, but that is the tactical nous that we know Volokong is famed for. Doesn't necessarily have the outright pace of the likes of Oscar, of somebody like an Alex Oath, but his racecraft and his race management, his race IQ is exceptional. Now he's up the inside of Lafferty, who does fight this. Volokong has to give him the duty of care around the outside. Big slide for the RB. Oscar's going to say thank you very much and cruise past, and now can set off after his teammate. Through goes the Alpine and Mario's Formula as well, and Volokong, we're talking about his racing IQ, could be under pressure from a couple of cars. Look at that nose to tail the two McLarens. The Alpine and Mario's Formula sensing an opportunity as well. Dangles the nose of that pink car down the inside of the trailing McLaren of Oscar, but holding firm around the outside is the championship leader and does fend off that assault from the Alpine of Mario's Formula, but for only a moment, because he's a little bit wide there and still right tucked up underneath the rear wing of the McLaren is Mario's Formula, ducking this way and that. Is it the inside? Is it the outside? Has to be the outside. Oscar dangling up the inside of his teammate, who locks the brakes. Bit of a mistake there from Volokong. He's now under pressure as the two papaya cars go toward Mario's Formula, dipping his toes in this battle as well. Who's going to come out trumps? Bit of a slide, locking the rears is Oscar as he tries to hang it around the outside, but look at this, Mario's Formula putting his car in a place is not very welcome. Oscar could be losing a place here. He thought he was going to be in the lead of this train, dropped behind his teammate and main championship rival, now drops behind the Alpine.
Moment of hesitation into turn 5. That was the difference there, and Oscar with no momentum off the corner loses out flush to Mario's Formula. Now this race is on. He's got fresher tyres at his disposal. He's got more battery, but he is down on track position. Can he reclaim that? He's going to be applying that pressure and that squeeze all the way through. The two Kick Saubers going to battle further back too. It's inter-team war here at Las Vegas, and look at Oscar immediately fighting back. That's the extra battery. He blasts past, and he's looking for the net race lead to the inside of Volokong, and he's going to get it. Look at that, Oscar turning around his fortunes instantly. Is that going to be the mark of the Season 40 PSF1 champion, I wonder? Great recovery from Oscar. He's back to the head of this train where he feels he belongs. Mario's Formula, well, he was a brilliant piece of opportunistic driving once and then twice to break up the two McLarens, but in the end he's been foiled as Oscar charges back to the front. Straight line speed all the way, gets that one done. So a little bit of a moment at turn 5 on the last lap costing him, but what a recovery. He's now back in control of this Grand Prix.
And what an interesting couple of laps. At times both McLarens looking a bit tepid, a bit passive, but look at this, Mario's Formula. Is he leaking another place? He thought he could potentially get ahead of both McLarens. Now he finds himself in between the two Saubers. Down the inside goes Silo. I think he just clouts the wall, Mario's Formula. Didn't have a lot of space, and here comes Riorone lapping this one up around the outside through turn 6. He's clear of the Alpine, and this is not going very well for Mario's Formula. The last lap and a half has been, well, he's going to be sick to the back teeth of the sight of this. Thought he'd be ahead of the two McLarens. Now is behind the two Saubers.
What a disastrous turn of events for the man from Cyprus, now down in position 9 on the road. He'll gain some through the pit stops, but yeah, now buried near the back of this train. Only the trailing Matteo with that wing damage behind him in this lot of DRS drivers up at the front. Lifeboat losing the front of the race to Dirk. Dirk finding great pace on these hards, and it's interesting Lifeboat, and I think he's doing the right thing here. He didn't decide to come in right away and react once he knew he was giving up that undercut. He must have known the track position was gone. He's built a bit of an offset. He's pitting at the end of lap 12, probably about as late as he can feasibly go, and Yasir Saki and Azim will follow suit. But I think Lifeboat, what he's done, he knew he wasn't going to be able to get out in front of any of these guys in that net leading group pretty much, so he's tried to build a bit of an offset and hope that he can come back in the last couple of laps with fresher tyres under his belt. You see, he is going to lose several seconds to these guys. The pain from that staying out longer is felt at the moment, and he is going to come out too behind the likes of Lafferty and Fraser. So plenty of work to do from a man in a leading position. I'm not sure if it's going to be the best strategy for him in the long run, as Marius Formula loses out once again to Matteo out there. What a disastrous couple of laps it's been for the Alpine driver. Fraser moves past Lafferty, but how is this unconventional strategy for Lifeboat going to work? He currently runs 10th. Lots of overtaking to do if he wants to recover his places. I think it's going to be a tall order, but we know he's got the speed to do so. Lifeboat on the charge. That's going to be a big story in the second half of this race.
Definitely got the pace. He's about 5 seconds off the back of the 6-car train. The 2 McLarens, the 2 Saubers, the Aston Martin of Armateo, and the Alpine of Marius Formula, the teammate, of course, of Lifeboat. His first task is to try and dispose of Lafferty, who's still out there on the medium tyres that he started the race on ASAP. Obviously, not going to go for it down to turn number 12. I would describe that as unwise, but if he can get a good run, the compromised RB in front, minus half of his front wing, this should be very, very regulation for Lifeboat. Was at one stage leading this race, was left out to dry a little bit longer, so decided to go for the offset, trying to give himself a tyre advantage come the end of this 25-lap race. Still hasn't got through. DRS lap is not open yet for the RB. Well, it wouldn't open at all for the RB, but eventually Lifeboat pulls past and does move up into 9th place on the road. It's going to be a net 8th by the time that Dirk makes his stop in. He's tracking very, very nicely, you have to say. And if those medium tyres sing for Dirk, is clouting the barrier not once but twice as Lafferty through 14, 15 and 16. Dirk could be a real threat as well come the end of this race.
I'm not sure if the medium tyres are going to provide the pace offset that he's looking for, given the amount of time he's leaking right now. But yeah, he's certainly going to be one to watch in the back half of this race. He's showing excellent pace, it has to be said, on those hard tyres. We saw how quickly he was able to chase down Lifeboat once he had a bit of clean air at his disposal. But right now, he's got to deal with that tyre disadvantage and the gap plummeting between himself and Oscar. Once Oscar's got to the front and Volokongen's been behind him, he's been able to be in cruise control. Volokongen saving his battery. I think he knows that his battle, his assault, has to come later in the race as Azim and Lafferty exchange places further back in the field. Azim getting the move done on the hobbled RB car, currently now down into position 12 on the road, having a really torrid time out there. But yeah, Dirk, where is he going to emerge relative to these guys, and how does this inter-team battle at Woking unfold? Volokongen chasing his teammate down. He doesn't show much interest in challenging at the moment, and he's got to be careful for Silo. We know the short-term pace that he has at his disposal. Further back, that's Yasir Saki and the Aston Martin's heading off at turn number 12. Manages to keep it out of the wall, I do believe. He's managed to keep that thing running, but that does show the cost of mistakes at this track and why nothing is guaranteed at this circuit. Lifeboat makes another possession on Fraser. 5 seconds to the group in front. It's going to be a charge. It's going to be a tall order, though.
Something else for Lifeboat to note is that this train is starting to just despair a little bit, just starting to get detached a couple of drivers. Look at that Silo looking to the inside and to the outside to try and muscle his way past Volokongen, now trying to get the up and under. Got an incredible drive out of turn number 1, but just had a little bit of a snap of oversteer and having to hold station behind the second McLaren as things stand. Volokongen really being made to work for this second place on the road as things stand, because all over the back of him still is Silo as the yellow flags are out. That is Yasir Saki retiring in the pit lane, and we are down to 12 runners after we lost Lawrence on the opening lap. But look at Armateo. I'm not sure if he fixed his front wing damage. I'd be surprised if he did, because he's still in touch with that quartet in front, but it's just hovering around a second off the back of that group of 4 that are battling so hard in front of him. That in turn is making life harder for Marius Formula, who of course will be dropping away from them as well, and it will just bring Lifeboat closer and closer. He's got 11 laps to try and catch this group, and then he's got to try and work his way through 6 cars.
He'd benefit massively from Matteo losing out on that DRS. Brakes in the train are what he needs, because otherwise, with everyone having DRS to keep them safe, it's going to be much harder for him to move up further up the road, though. Silo, he's getting interested in the McLaren. De Volakongen, he's just a tenth and a half behind, and that means both drivers are absolutely dumping their battery as they head towards turn 14. Is Silo going to go for this? He's gaining all the time. Now looks towards the inside. Can he find something on the brakes? He's going to go for it late. Can he get it stopped and turned in? Yes, he can, but Volakongen holds on brilliantly and bravely around the outside. Can he see him off once again as they get the slipstream down the straight? Dirk pits from the lead. We'll see where he emerges. Silo again using that slipstream, but he doesn't have the battery. He's still going to go on the offensive up towards the outside of turn 1, but in the end he doesn't quite have the space. Volakongen running that in very deep and managing to just about hold him off in the 3 and 4. Silo still looking for that exit, and what this is doing is costing him DRS. Does he have it down the straight? He does not, and now he's even pickings for Silo, who cruises past on the straight, gets it done. He potted at him all the way through, forced him to drive off the line, and eventually it cost Volakongen that DRS shield that he had against the kick server. That's a brilliant bit of racecraft from Silo. He now runs P2.
Punch after punch after punch, and eventually Volakongen conceded because he had to. We saw the gap got up to 1.2 seconds. Couldn't stay ahead of the Sauber any longer if he wanted to keep in touch with his teammate and main championship rival. The problem is Volakongen seriously struggling now. He's dropped nearly a second to the Sauber in front of him. It could be another Sauber deja vu once again for Volakongen as he will try and hold on to this third place, but Jeroen could be nipping at his heels on the run down into turn number 14. Silo, interesting line there through turn 12. I wonder if he clouted the barrier, taking too much curb over the apex. He's just about going to keep DRS to Oscar in front. Volakongen should be solid and secure in P3 for the time being. 4/10 in his back pocket over Jeroen behind him. The gap is 1.1 seconds out in front, but with the helping hand of DRS, Silo is just going to cruise back up inside the 1 second window behind Oscar. But Oscar definitely starting to stretch his legs here. He knows that he can try and push this, try and drop a few drivers out of this DRS trend, and maybe leave them with a second Alpine to think about, because Lifebout now only 3 seconds off the back of this group.
He is a bit unfortunate that battling in the end has brought Matteo just that little bit nearer, but we'll see if the reigning champion could continue to hold on. One man that is still under pressure is the man that we praised so heavily on the last lap. He's having to work extra hard to stay with Oscar, getting that second bite of the cherry with DRS. He's pushing Volakongen to the brink too, but Oscar, I think, realising the opportunity he has, dumping a lot of his battery, trying to break away here. It seems as though Silo's managed to respond to that threat. It's further down the road. Dirk picks off Azem, and he's got Lifebout to chase down up the road. That those two charging up towards the lead group, that is going to be one of the dynamics to keep an eye on late in this Grand Prix as we now proceed on lap 17. It seems as though Silo and Volakongen, they both managed to stabilise the situation somewhat. Oscar certainly putting the field to the sword just like he did in Suzuka. Silo equal to it right now, but does he have the speed to threaten? Oscar has looked so serene in this second stint, barely troubled. He's stretching this train out. Silo and Volakongen only just able to stay in contact.
And that felt like a bit of a power play, didn't it, from Oscar, saying, here we go, this is what I've got, can you keep up? Just showing a little bit of a pace. I'm going to back it off a little bit now just to recharge, but that's what I've got. And if you can keep up, then congratulations to you. And I think Silo and Volakongen, both of them, will be pretty happy that they have just about managed to keep that McLaren in check, although Oscar, like he said, is looking very, very comfortable. And when he does just open the taps ever so slightly, he has got a small but significant enough pace advantage over the group behind to be comfortable and probably make their lives just that little bit harder than they were hoping. Lifebout taking half a second out of Marius Formula on this app. He needs to find a little bit more time. He's going to be under pressure from Dirk, who is absolutely flying at this stage. He's only 5 seconds off this group of cars, and if he continues up with that pace, 7 lap fresher medium tyres compared to the hards that the leaders are running, 6 laps for Oscar and Silo, and then just 3 laps for Lifebout, who obviously went for that tyre offset extending. This could get very interesting. We could have the DRS train reformed to 8 cars in just a matter of laps.
I think it's certainly trending that way, although there may be a break. Matteo now with that wing damage, does that hamper him enough? He's struggling to stay with Jeroen in front of him. He's been on the edge, teetering on the edge of that 1 second window all throughout this stint, but now as Jeroen tries to rally and chase after the top 3, it's putting the reigning champion under serious pressure. He needs a good run headed through turn number 12. He does benefit from the fact that Jeroen in front of him has virtually no battery to deploy, and that makes might be enough, but he doesn't get a clean run. Heading out of turn number 12, the gap 9/10 of a second. Again, if you lose that DRS, you are oh so vulnerable. It seems as though with a bit more battery than the man in front, he's managed to stay in contact, and it's actually Jeroen who may be the one losing out here. Again, with no battery, you are so far down on straight line speed, and ultimately the second kick sour being punished for that here on lap 18.
And that's also why Marius is still all over the back of Armate, who equally has absolutely no battery left and has a wobble for good measure as well through turn 15. But Marius smacks the wall, and that's going to keep him behind, at least for the time being. But look at this, he's still just 0.2 of a second off the back of Armate, the reigning champion, under the cosh here as we start 19 with this pair. Darting to the inside goes Marius, trying to get this place back. He was second at one point in this train of cars. Hanging around the outside goes Armate, hampered by that lack of front downforce, but does a really, really good job there to hold firm. But sliding wide through turn 4 is going to open him up for the up and under from Marius Formula. And with the DRS and a better exit, that Alpine is going to blast back past and up into position number 5. He's got his work cut out though. Same with Jeroen in front. They have been gapped by the top 3.
Yeah, Jeroen, he can do what he can in the corners, but on the straights now, he's at such a major disadvantage. All of these top 3 have plenty of battery, and even if they're not using it, that's still going to affect if you can't deploy any down the straight. He loses the rear at a turn 9 too, and I think his hopes and dreams of a podium in this race may be slipping away here, because if he comes onto that straight, he is going to get dropped on this lap if he does not have DRS, and it looks as though he's not going to get it. He's trying everything he can. A scruffy run through turn 12, and I think that's going to be it for Jeroen's run at the front of this field. A valiant effort, but ultimately he is distanced, and it's still Oscar's infernal pace putting these guys to the sword. Further back though, we could see a couple of swaps. Matteo coming up Marius Formula, and 2 Dirk to Lifeboat. So Matteo, he is going to reclaim this possession in his own private battle with the Alpine driver out there, but Dirk managing to pick off Lifeboat. We talked about Lifeboat's charge, but it seemed as though that overcut has not gone his way because he's been usurped on this charge by Dirk. Dirk now already charging down the cars in P5 and 6. He is flying out there. The question is he going to have enough laps?
And I don't think Lifeboat at this stage will be too perturbed by that. Dirk definitely still has the pace advantage on those medium compound tyres, and Lifeboat can always use the Ferrari in front as a yardstick. See how easy it is for Dirk to get past. Try if he can to follow Dirk through, because you can see that the 3 cars in front of him in particular really struggling for pace. Marius Formula is struggling. Armateo has damage. Jeroen has been dropped as well. So this is an opportunity for Dirk and Lifeboat to just try and pick them off one by one, get themselves up into 4th and 5th, and then we'll see where we stand in a few laps' time. The top 3 continue to break away. Gap nearly 2 seconds back to the second Sauber of Jeroen. The McLaren's sandwiching the second Sauber, the lead Sauber of Silo at the moment, who has really closed up to the back of Oscar, been following him very, very closely through the middle sector thus far. And this could get interesting on the run down into 14.
Yeah, does he want to take the lead though this early, I wonder, as we get towards this point in the race, lap 20-21. You're at the point where you start thinking about, okay, do I make my move now? Further back, Dirk, I don't know how he's done that in a turn 12, but he's managed to pick off Marius Formula and get away, and he's going to get DRS too off the man in front of him. Marius Formula, I think, just backing off, allowing his teammate through to go with Dirk and losing another couple of possessions. It's really been a nightmare stint up at the front. Silo closing on Oscar, elects not to go for it. He didn't have much immediate pressure from Volakongen, so he can afford to do that right now. As they bunch up, I wonder if that choice is going to be just so easy from there on out. He runs P2, still biding his time with a real shot at the win as it stands as they head onto lap 21. Dirk though and Lifeboat managing to get critical moves on Marius Formula. The man in front of him is going to be a bit of a challenge though. Matteo has managed, to his credit, to come across to Jeroen and reclaim that DRS. So Dirk, he's got another tough move on his hands to pull that off, but he's just demonstrated that every corner on the track is a potential passing point with the pace he has.
And if they're going to get on the podium, they've got to get their skates on. Now 2.6 seconds, the gap between Volakongen and Jeroen. The Sauber really struggling. The Aston Martin of Armateo, yes, he's got back into contention, struggling as well. Dirk swacks the barrier. Armateo goes for a slide coming out of turn number 5. He had a think about it for just one moment down the inside into 7. The closing speed wasn't quite there, but he's got so much more grip and confidence. Armateo's sideways, almost perpendicular to the circuit. That allows Dirk to send it up the inside. Both of them getting out of shape though. Who's got the confidence? Who's got the battery left? Dirk has got a hell of a lot of ERS left in his Ferrari, and he powers around the outside, but critically doesn't yet and won't get the DRS to Jeroen unless he can have a good run through 12. You would imagine, but he clouts the curb on the inside, losing time to the Sauber, and Dirk, having just got past the Aston Martin, might be relinquishing 1, maybe even 2 spots, because Lifeboat is right there as well.
Yeah, that sap of oversteer on the exit has cost him dearly, and look at Lifeboat on the charge there, both going to close up to the back of the Ferrari. Are they going to have enough track though? To the inside looks Lifeboat. Armateo could find himself boxed in here. Lifeboat, beautiful car placement. He gets the move done then, and he's managed to catch Matteo a little bit napping there. Through he goes. Maybe that extra grip serving his will. Dirk managing to recover. He had to use a lot of that spare battery. He no longer has a huge amount of power at his disposal, but he does claw himself back towards your own. This one should be a bit more straightforward, you would think, in terms of an overtake. He should just wait for a clear-cut opportunity, and then it is just the top three. He's provided plenty of entertainment for us in this Grand Prix with a great series of moves, and that was a wonderful battle with Matteo on the last lap. He's biding his time trying to recover some battery, and I imagine that place of choice is going to be on the straight, so he sits in behind for now, but 3.6 seconds to the top three, I think that may be a stretch too far for him.
100%, but we saw the effects of having battery left up because Dirt didn't have the DRS, but he dumped as much ERS as he possibly could, and that was what kept him ahead of Matteo and kept him ahead of Lifeboat as well. Silo, I don't know if you've noticed it, for the past 2 or 3 laps has been glued to the rear of Oscar. Here comes Dirt though, using that ERS that he's got stored in the Ferrari, and like we saw in the previous lap, dives past the kick salver of Jeroen. Armateo it was on lap 21, it's Jeroen on lap 22, and Lifeboat in hot pursuit as well, but we're going to find ourselves in a similar situation. Dirt's going to have to dump the ERS that he's got stored up again, not using it to try and catch the group in front, using it to stay ahead of the cars behind.
Yeah, we'll see the gap. It does seem to be enough for him. He is beginning to run out near the end of this straight, and the overspeed for Jeroen is pretty dramatic. Up towards turn 14 they go, but in the end, yeah, he just runs out of track. Even 1.8 kilometers is not quite enough for him to reclaim that position, and Dirk now can more focus on his own race. He is catching rapidly on the lead trio because I think these guys are more focused on themselves. None of them are running the battery. I don't think any of them are pushing particularly hard as Lifeboat tries to follow Dirk through again to the outside of turn 1. Jeroen's not going to give that one up easily though. He breaks very, very late. Does he have the grip to see it through? At the moment it seems he does. It's actually the Alpine sliding around on the wide line and heading a full face full of dirty air through the middle of turns 3 and 4. In the end, that puts an end to his advances for now, and Dirk finally has that cushion. I think though, the reason why we saw Dirk able to close so quickly, these guys, they are all saving their battery substantially. They are playing a waiting game, particularly Silo in that third position. He wants to wait until the last possible moment so Oscar doesn't have a chance to counterattack. Oscar is trying to save his battery because he needs as much fighting power as he has to be able to hold off the attack when it does come. So it's a waiting game amongst these three, and that could be Dirk's ticket in. That gap already chomping down on this lap, 2.7 seconds now.
And look at this, Lifeboat. Bit of indecision with this contact. Slams into the wall. Jeroen taken with him. Armateo says, thank you very much. I'll pick up a couple of free spots. Marius Formula trying to do the same. That was a very, very strange bit of contact between the Alpine and the kick salver. Jeroen's now got half a front wing left. I think Lifeboat has managed to come through unscathed. Look out in front, though. Oscar has just lost the lead. Silo thinking now's the time to bolt. He takes the lead of the Grand Prix with the helping hand of DRS. Lifeboat blasts back past Armateo, but he's going to be a little bit wounded as well. Dirk losing time back over 3 seconds, but what a strange bit of contact that was. Looked like a bit of an ego battle that maybe it looked like Jeroen was weaving about a little bit on the circuit, but Lifeboat just driving into the side of him by the looks of that. Maybe a bit of a miscommunication. Asim's going to pick up some spots as well. Jeroen is not a very happy bunny, it has to be said. Now coming into the pits, no front wing for the Sauber, and what was a very, very good race for Jeroen is going to end in very much disappointment. But now we see what the two McLarens have got. Less than 2 to go. Silo has the lead.
Yes, Silo does have the lead. He didn't have to make a huge investment either to get that move done. He's still got plenty of battery to use in defence. Oscar, I would be very surprised if he goes for the move on this lap unless prompted to by his teammate and rival Volakongen. That's going to be one to look out for further back. How much can Volakongen interfere and intervene in this battle between the top two on the track and in the race? So, in the middle of lap 24, a lap and a half to go in this Grand Prix. It looks like Dirk is just going to run out of time. Maybe the medium's not quite firing anymore. Lifeboat as well looks set for P5 as he puts Matteo under pressure to stay in that DRS. On to the back straight they go, and Oscar is nowhere near. I don't think the move's going to come this time around, and Silo can pretty much hold this lead and keep most of his battery at his disposal further back, as in managing to pick off Mario's formula. He's had a really good comeback drive in this race too to get himself back in contention. Mateo's not giving up the fight against Lifeboat either, so that's going to be a battle to look out for. But the main attraction is at the front as Silo, Oscar and Volokongin bunch up into turns 14 and 15 for the penultimate time. Silo will lead them onto the final lap with 2 McLarens hounding his rear wing. Onto the final lap we go. What does the championship leader have in store for the race leader here in Las Vegas?
Well, I think Silo's running slightly lower wings because the 2 McLarens were burning battery on the run down into the final corner of 17 and Silo was not. And Oscar and Volokonga didn't really take any time out of the current race leader. So this is going to be a fascinating battle. Volokonga was actually a little bit quicker than Oscar on the previous turn. The championship leader should pick up this championship. He's ahead of his main rival, but can he make it 3 wins on the trot? He's running out of opportunities, but there is, of course, one big one down into 14.
Here we go. Now is the calm before the storm. Heading into turns 7, 8 and 9, and traction out of here is going to be imperative. Silo running deep on the brakes. He's got plenty of confidence in that car and clearly plenty of grip. Oscar needs to stay close here. If he doesn't quite have as much straight line speed at his disposal, he's got pretty much a full battery to use, but so does Silo. The run to turn 12 is going to be everything here. Half a second of difference. It's right in the fun zone. The run out of this corner is going to mean everything. Silo and Oscar, who can nail it better? Oscar all over the road. Silo, does he have enough of a gap in hand, Tom?
Well, I think he might do. 6.5 tenths per second. He's got a lot of battery left, about half of it in the tank. Here comes Oscar, championship leader. Can he chase him down? He lost the lead with a couple of laps to go. Is he going to reclaim it with a couple of corners to go? The DRS flap's open, but he's not gaining quite enough. Just dips under half a second. It's going to have to be an audacious move into the final braking zone of this lap, and he is not close enough. Still an opportunity on the dash to the line. Volokongan looks too far gone as Azam gets past Mateo, but it looks like it's going to be Silo, is it? It's always difficult to tell, but with 3 tenths in hand, he is going to hit the jackpot. Not all that glitters is gold for Oscar tonight, as he'll come home in P2, will not quite get the maximum, will not get the hat trick, and he'll have to wait until Brazil to try and sign, seal and deliver that championship with his teammate just lurking behind in P3. Dirk over the line in 4th. Good recovery, good strategy as well from the Ferrari. Azam finishing just behind Lifeboat by just under 2 tenths of a second. That was pretty spicy over the line with Marius Fowler in 7th. Ahead of Armateo, who has no front wing. Didn't catch that one, interestingly enough. Fraser and Lafferty are going to complete the top 10 finishes with Evan Nye, who was caught out in a battle with his teammate on the opening lap that ended Lawrence's race and left Evan Nye, I should say, with no front wing. But it was Silo that disrupts the papaya party, but it is still going to be celebrations at Woking because I believe they have secured the Constructors' Championship.
I think that's probably going to be the case beyond any real doubt. Alpine, the only team really still in contention at this point, and with P5 and P7, I'm not actually sure if Lifeboat will get points for them. He is a full-time driver, but yeah, I believe that's McLaren, but we'll tidy up the results in due course. Oscar does have that pole position point as well, so that could work in McLaren's favour. But the day belongs to Silo, beautifully managed all the way through. It seemed to just have the raw speed in the places that mattered. He, as you alluded to, may have had the lower wings that made a difference, but Oscar was really unable to provide much pressure on that last lap. Silo, he kept enough of his battery in hand to be pretty much able to cover all bases there, and in the end, the championship leader provided very little threat at the end. Silo, it says 2.5 tenths of a second, which is not a big margin at all, but all things considered, a pretty comfortable win for Silo.
It was, and he chose to go for it with a couple of laps to go. Got past on 23. Lafferty, or Evan Nye, sorry, is doing some donuts. Some of us have things to do this evening though, so if you could cross the line any time today, that would be absolutely lovely. And he does cross the line with a few hours of the day remaining, a couple of hours of the day remaining. Won't pick up a point as we see a car or hear a car behind slam it into the barrier. Not sure who it would have been, because of course it was an AI, but it was Silo who in the end we thought Oscar had a little bit more pace in hand after that burst midway through the final stint where he just tried to drop people out of DRS. He split the train up ever so slightly, but it was Silo that came through. I think he did have slightly lower wings, and that played out beautifully on that last lap. Takes the race winner, fastest lap for Evan Nye. Driver of the day and most overtakes for Azam. We didn't speak too much about him, but after disconnecting and qualifying, starting on the back road to finish P6, I think it was, maybe. No, it was P6, yes. That is a very solid effort. And Volokonga with the cleanest driver. Once he got overtaken by Silo, he just didn't look like he quite had enough to get back ahead of either the Sauber or his McLaren teammate. Good points for Dirk as well. Finished on the podium a couple of weeks ago. Lifebout went for the offset, went for the overcut. Didn't quite work out for him. Just about held off the charging. As Amaris Formula was in the wars, as was Armateo, Fraser and Lafferty. Your points finishers. Retirees. Lauren's on the opening lap. Yasesaki and Euron with a few laps to go. And Evan Knight with the fastest lap, but just misses out on points. And that is your Las Vegas Grand Prix. The championship, constructors-wise, is pretty much done, but the drivers will go to Brazil, and I think it's going to be a fairly standard task for Oscar, especially since Alex Lofer's attendance is not quite up to scratch.
Yeah, very suspect. So I think, yeah, Oscar, I think a clean race will just about do it for him. I have been cleaning up the constructors. By my calculations, I do think it is a wrap. McLaren went into this race 49 points ahead. They've outscored Alpine by 13 points on the night. That brings the gap up to 62, and if I'm not mistaken, there are 58 points on offer for constructors in the race to come. So that would mean that McLaren, that partnership of Volakongen and Oscar will be your PSF1 Constructors champions for this season. And Tom, given the level of dominance they've displayed, especially in the last few rounds, of course, denied the race victory tonight, but you can't deny that is richly deserved.
It's funny, isn't it? Because we were saying, I think 3 weeks ago, that McLaren, Alpine and Red Bull were separated by, I think, 9 or 10 points in the Constructors' Championship. That's how close it was. We were expecting a battle. And then the lead driver for Red Bull hasn't turned up since. The lead driver for Alpine hasn't turned up since. And the two McLarens have gone, well, I mean, this has just been handed to us on a silver platter. We'll take that from the waiter and we'll have it for dinner. And they've absolutely walked it in the last few races. Not winning all of them, but both of them have finished on the podium in the last 3 races. 2 wins and a second for Oscar. 1 second and 2 thirds for Volakongen. Wraps up that constructors' battle that at one stage was looking very competitive. But they have been the best pairing, it has to be said.
Oh, there's no doubt about that. I mean, ultimately, the first step to becoming a champion is simply turning up on the start line. And, well, certainly in these last few rounds, though, you can't deny the levels that they have shown. 4 victories on the season up to this point in the 9 rounds that we've contested. So, in the end, I don't think there's much to be argued about. Rich congratulations to those drivers. Of course, they will have bigger things on their minds, though. They will turn their attentions on to the drivers' battle, just working out, I believe, Oscar's advantage over Volakongen after this round is going to be 26 points. I believe he outscored him by a margin of 3 points tonight. So Volakongen still has a chance, but it's a slim one. And unless Oscar has a pretty disastrous race, which we've very rarely seen throughout this season up to this point, in the next round at Brazil, it does seem to be trending that way for an Oscar championship. Still not over, but I think you could safely say he's got at least 7 or 8 fingers on that trophy.
100%. I think Volokon would have to outscore him by 6 or 7 points. So Oscar, what are we looking at? Maybe a P5 finish plus the pole position would probably take the championship for him, or guarantee the championship for him, no matter what Volokon does. So stay tuned for that. We will be crowning, you would expect, our season 40 champion in a week's time. And just to tell you what is going to be happening in a week's time, we head to the mecca of motorsport, especially in South America. It is Interlagos for the Brazilian Grand Prix. I have a picture of it just behind me of the Sao Paulo circuit, my favourite track on the calendar. Always an absolute banger. And on the F1 games, it's not too shabby either, especially if there is a little bit of rain thrown in, as we often see in Brazil. And if we don't see the champion crown next week, well, it will be a showdown in Mexico City for the Mexico Grand Prix, taking place in the first week of October. And it will be one of the 2 McLaren drivers, as it most likely will in real life. Although as a McLaren fan, I am slightly worried about a certain Max Verstappen. But that is real life. This is PSGL, of course. And Oscar has been, ever since he's been given the opportunity to try and grab this championship by the scruff of the neck, he has been perfect. Not quite, actually, because he didn't win this week, but almost perfect. Just missing out on 2 points over the last 3 races.
Yeah, it's pretty extraordinary how close to perfect he has been. And of course, let's not forget, well, all the big hitters, well, most of them were here earlier in the season. He still managed to grab a stunning win at Imola with that incredible overtake with a couple of laps to go. He's had bad fortune too throughout this season. A disconnection in Silverstone set him back a long way, and we thought maybe his chances in this championship had been cut down. And well, maybe we didn't anticipate the circumstances in which he'd turn things around. You certainly can't hold anything against the season that he is putting together at the moment. Still, he has to see it through, but at the moment it's looking very much like he's going to wrap it up at Interlagos, and I'm very much with you. It is a track steeped in so much history throughout F1, in both real life and in league racing, and yeah, I'm certainly with you. It should produce an absolute barnstormer, as it tends to do, so we're going to have to look forward to that one in the meantime. So one championship wrapped up, one championship on the verge of being wrapped up. We'll see what happens in the penultimate round. But I cannot wait, Tom, especially any race at Interlagos is always one to look forward to.
Always a fun one. And it should be a nice crowning moment maybe for Oscar to pick up that championship. Before we go, remember everybody, check out Sim Racing Setup to try and improve your performance, unlock that extra performance on the F1 25 game with their Pro F1 25 car setups developed and created by the drivers you see week in, week out at PSGL. Esports and stable setups available for qualifying, race, whether it's dry or wet, they've got you absolutely covered. And you'll get some optimal race strategies thrown in there as well, all available for £49.49. Less than 50 quid for all of these setups. Absolute bargain if you ask me, over at simracingsetup.com. If you use the code PSGL at checkout, you'll get a 5% discount, making it even more reasonably priced.
It's such a deal, you cannot turn it down. Make sure to have a look at that. But I think that's going to be near enough it for tonight. And yeah, well, I think we've given up on trying to get drivers in here to talk to us. It seems as though they don't have much interest in that. So I think that's going to be just about all we have time for tonight. It's certainly a much more exciting race than the one we were treated to at Suzuka. Hopefully Interlagos is more of the same or even better, but we may see a champion crowned. Make sure to be tuned in next week.
We might do. And if we do have a champion crowned, I'm going to be working very hard to drag Oscar into this interview box. We can ask him a couple of questions. Even if he's unwilling, we're going to try our very best. Thank you everybody for watching. Pleasure as always to bring this series to you. Dan Daka, where can people find you on the old social medias to keep up with keep up with what you're up to?
You can find me on Twitter or X. Again, I'm still not sure what we're referring to that as nowadays, but you can find me at Daka23. That is capital D, lowercase a, capital K, lowercase e, capital H23. Please drop me a follow. That'd be much appreciated. Make
sure you do that, everybody. If you're interested in what I'm doing, at TW6 on Twitter and Twitch, Wilco.coms and Wilco.darts on TikTok and Instagram. But thank you everybody for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed the Las Vegas Grand Prix. Slightly more exciting, as we said, than Suzuka a week ago. And hopefully what we see in Brazil in 7 days' time is equally as enthralling. And who knows, the Drivers' Champion might be crowned. And will we see the return of Alex Lofer from the depths of wherever he has been for the last few weeks? But until then, thank you ever so much for watching. And we will see you in 7 days' time. Have a good rest of your evening. Until then, goodbye. Where's the end screen? There we go.